What if the absolute worst day of your life, the moment everything you built was violently stripped away, was not a tragedy but an initiation? We are conditioned to view loss as a deficit, a cruel subtraction from our carefully curated existence. You mourn the severed relationship, the collapsed business, the sudden plunge from grace, convinced that the universe has robbed you of your rightful trajectory. But what if that sudden, devastating void is the only environment where true mastery can be forged? Consider the court of Rome in the 1st century, an epicenter of unimaginable wealth, cutthroat ambition, and lethal paranoia. Here, Lucius Annaeus Seneca the Younger stood as a prominent statesman, a celebrated playwright, and a man possessing immense social capital. He navigated the treacherous corridors of imperial power with unmatched eloquence, advising the elite and shaping the cultural zeitgeist of the empire. Yet in the blink of an eye, the political tides violently turned, proving that proximity to power is often the most dangerous place to stand. Under the sudden decree of Emperor Claudius, Seneca was stripped of his influence, his vast estates, and his reputation, banished to the barren, fever-ridden island of Corsica. He was thrust from the pinnacle of Roman society into total obscurity, facing a sentence of forced isolation that spanned from 41 to 49 AD. For a man accustomed to the pulse of the empire, this abrupt exile was designed to be a psychological death sentence, a complete erasure of his identity. This is where the theoretical meets the visceral. It is easy to preach virtue when your stomach is full and your status is secure. Stoicism, the ancient Greek philosophy emphasizing emotional resilience, self-control, and the understanding that we cannot control external events, only our reactions to them, was about to be violently tested. Seneca had written of these principles, but now, marooned on a jagged rock in the Mediterranean, he had to live them. You have likely faced your own Corsica. It might not be a physical island, but rather a season of profound isolation, a sudden career derailment, or a catastrophic personal failure that leaves you marooned from your previous identity. The instinct in these barren places is to rage against the injustice, to beg for a return to the familiar, or to succumb to the paralyzing grip of despair. You view the exile as a punishment to simply endure. Seneca refused to let the island be his tomb. He recognized that while the emperor commanded his physical location, no mortal decree could dictate the climate of his mind. He began to utilize the crushing silence of Corsica not as a punishment, but as a crucible. The absence of Roman distraction became a profound advantage, stripping away the superficial noise that drowns out deep introspection and leaving only the essential core of his being. We mistakenly believe that resilience is merely bouncing back to who we were before the trauma. True resilience, however, is a transformative fire. It is the realization that the person who entered the flames cannot be the same person who emerges. By embracing the harshness of his reality, Seneca initiated a radical psychological pivot, shifting his focus from what was lost to what could finally be built in the absolute quiet. He engaged in what modern psychology might recognize as a form of shadow work, the process of confronting and integrating the hidden, repressed, or darker aspects of the unconscious mind. Stripped of his titles, he had to face the naked reality of his own ego, his past compromises in the Roman court, and his underlying fears of mortality and irrelevance. There was nowhere left to hide, no audience left to impress, and no external validation to soothe his pride. From this intense period of internal excavation emerged some of the most profound writings in human history. He penned consolations to his grieving mother, not to ask for pity, but to comfort her with the very philosophical framework he was actively forging. These texts were not the desperate scribblings of a broken man, but the authoritative declarations of a mind achieving absolute sovereignty over its circumstances, turning grief into an intellectual weapon. The physical constraints of his environment catalyzed a limitless expansion of his intellect. He wrote extensively on the shortness of life, the futility of anger, and the nature of true happiness, producing works that would lay the foundation for his famous Letters from a Stoic. As Seneca once observed, fire tests gold, suffering tests brave men. He demonstrated that external misfortune, when met with disciplined perception, is merely raw material for personal mastery. Look at your own grievances, the obstacles you currently curse, the unfair advantages others seem to hold, the setbacks that keep you awake at night. What if you stopped demanding that the world be fair and instead demanded that you become unbreakable? The renegade path requires you to stop outsourcing your emotional stability to external conditions that you cannot control. It demands a radical acceptance of the present reality, however brutal, as the necessary starting point for your ultimate ascent. This shift requires confronting cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experienced by someone who holds two or more contradictory beliefs or values. You cannot simultaneously believe that you are the master of your fate while constantly blaming your environment for your misery. Seneca had to reconcile his identity as a powerful Roman with his reality as a powerless exile, resolving the dissonance by redefining power entirely, locating it not in the Senate, but in the soul. It was not a painless transition. The essays from Corsica reveal a man grappling with the intense human desire for relevance, battling the creeping shadows of depression that accompany profound isolation. Yet he systematically dismantled his own despair through rigorous logic and philosophical inquiry. He observed the natural world around him, finding solace in the immutable laws of the universe that remained untouched by imperial politics or human cruelty. Society sells you a fragile version of happiness, one entirely dependent on the accumulation of wealth, status, and uninterrupted comfort. It is a house built on sand, vulnerable to the slightest shift in economic tides or social favor. The ancient wisdom forged on that island offers a terrifying but liberating alternative, an inner fortress constructed from virtue and self-reliance, impervious to the whims of any modern-day emperor or sudden economic collapse. Imagine possessing a mind so fortified that a demotion, a bankruptcy, or a smear campaign feels merely like a change in the weather. You acknowledge the rain, you may even feel the cold, but it does not penetrate the core of your being. This is the ultimate rebellion against a fragile world. It is the absolute refusal to be a victim of circumstance, choosing instead to be the architect of your own character. When Seneca was finally recalled to Rome to tutor the young Nero, he returned not as a broken survivor, but as a philosophical titan. The 8 years of exile had crystallized his thought, transforming him from a brilliant rhetorician into a profound moral guide. The isolation had not diminished his influence. It had exponentially amplified the depth, the gravity, and the unshakable authenticity of his voice. The principles he honed in the wilderness now guided his actions at the absolute center of global power. He understood that the gold of Rome was as indifferent as the rocks of Corsica. His wealth and status, though restored, were no longer the anchors of his identity. He held them lightly, fully aware that they could be confiscated again at any moment and fully prepared to let them go without shedding a single tear. This concept of non-attachment is your ultimate weapon in a chaotic era. You can pursue ambition, build empires, and enjoy the fruits of your labor, but you must never let them define your core worth. If your business fails tomorrow, you must remain whole. If your reputation is unjustly attacked, your inner equilibrium must hold fast. You must be willing to walk away from the banquet at any moment, entirely satisfied with what you carry inside. Existentialism, a later philosophical movement emphasizing individual existence, freedom, and choice, echoes this ancient resilience. It posits that we are condemned to be free, entirely responsible for assigning meaning to our lives regardless of the absurd or hostile conditions we face. Seneca lived this concept centuries before it was named, choosing to assign profound meaning to a meaningless punishment, proving that human agency is the one asset that cannot be seized. We live in an age of perpetual outrage, where individuals actively seek out grievances to validate their lack of progress. The renegade noble rejects this victimhood entirely. When you are exiled by your peers, passed over for the promotion, or left behind by a shifting culture, you do not complain. You retreat to your own Corsica, you study the terrain, you confront your weaknesses, and you silently sharpen your blade. It requires a ruthless, unflinching honesty to look at your failures and extract the hidden lessons. The ego will scream for vindication. It will demand that you focus on the unfairness of the blow, the betrayal of a partner, or the sheer bad luck of the draw. But the disciplined mind silences the ego, asking only one question: how can I use this? This is the alchemy of the empowered individual, turning the lead of misfortune into the gold of indestructible character. Every obstacle is an opportunity to practice a specific virtue. A difficult colleague is a training ground for patience. A financial loss is a masterclass in resourcefulness. A sudden illness is a profound lesson in appreciating the fragile present moment. The Stoic framework transforms the world from a hostile minefield into a customized gymnasium for your spirit, where every heavy weight is designed to increase your strength. The legacy of that Roman statesman is not found in the political maneuvers he executed before his fall, but in the timeless wisdom he captured during his darkest years. The letters from a Stoic continue to guide leaders, thinkers, and mavericks precisely because they were forged in the fires of genuine hardship. They carry the undeniable weight of lived experience, offering a roadmap out of the darkness drawn by a man who navigated it himself. Your legacy, too, will not be defined by the easy victories or the moments of uninterrupted comfort. It will be defined by how you respond when the floor collapses beneath you. Will you shatter into 1,000 pieces of resentment, or will you use the friction to ignite a fire that illuminates your true path? The adversity you face today is simply the universe asking you what kind of ancestor you intend to be. The choice is entirely yours. The island of adversity awaits. You can let it break you. Let it turn you into a bitter ghost haunting the shores of what used to be. Or you can claim your sovereignty, embrace the silence, and forge a philosophy of resilience so powerful that the world will have no choice but to marvel at the masterpiece you create from the ruins.